Good morning, afternoon, and evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'm George Moss here again at allpointstv.com, and we come together to present this program at 2 o'clock in the afternoon on Mondays. And we are here. We're just like the people that predict the weather. You can predict we're going to be here at 2 o'clock, and we are here every Monday at 2, from 2 o'clock to 3. And we are here again today, and we're glad to have you out there with us, and hope you'll stay tuned for the next hour. We're glad to have not only the viewers and listeners at allpointstv.com, but also the listeners at 92.1 WFOV, and we're glad to have them aboard as well. We'll be taking a break around the 26-minute mark for them, and they'll come back after about a 4-minute pause, and we will pick it up at that point for them. But those that are here for the time period straight through the hour, you're going to be surprised of all the things we're going to talk about here that's going to prick your interest. And we're going to be the most exciting podcast program during the 2 o'clock period.
That nails it dynamite.
Yeah, I was during the last weekend. I made the mistake of going to Ohio, and I was wearing my hat, and every time I seem to be wearing this hat, and I go into Ohio, particularly during the football season. You can't drive. If you're going to drive through Ohio and it's during the football season where you're reminding them that eventually we're going to be playing the football team down there, I would advise you to take your hat off, because I think they look for you. First of all, the problem is your tag going through there, and that's a problem. And then I was doing 5 miles over the speed limit, and I was pretty proud of myself because I went right by this one car, and I thought I was doing pretty good. I didn't hit the brakes when I someone, as I approached him, I got close to the place where he was parked. So I thought 5 miles over, that's not too bad. And I just zoomed right by him. I wasn't zooming by him, went 5 miles over the speed limit. But down there, if you got a Michigan tag, you're zooming by these guys. These guys don't want you doing, they want you to be right there on the mark. If you're from Michigan, I'm pretty sure it's just applying to this state, going through with the Wolverines and going to the Buckeye State. And that's a no-no. And so as I passed by this guy and he was sitting there, I didn't think anything of it because, we got a different mentality up here in Michigan than we do down south where Ohio is. And I was feeling pretty good about myself, and all of a sudden here's this light on me, pulling me over to the side. And I said, he told me I was doing 5 miles over the, he told me I was speeding. And I wanted to remind him, because I was still feeling pretty good about it, I wasn't doing 10 miles over the speed limit. I mean, I give you 5, 5, 10, 5, 10, double hen. All around my base is spoiled. Remember that game we played? So he got to my window and told me that I was speeding, and that you show your license and all of that. Make sure you got the right driver that he's getting ready to give a 1 what for 2. And I came out and said that I was only doing 5 miles over the speed limit, and he told me, well, the speed limit is this. And he didn't give me a ticket, but he wanted me to know that that was not the speed limit. In Michigan, I think there's a certain mentality, right, that we have in Michigan. We think, if you're doing only 5 miles over the speed limit in this state, and you go by a trooper in this state, they practically wave at you because they're so proud that you're not disrespecting them at 70-mile-an-hour speed limit, and you're doing 75. We expect them to wave at you, and then at 80, we expect them to smile. Now, anything over that, you're on your own, but up to 5 to 10 miles, it's like, hey, he's not speeding. Everybody does, 5 to 10 miles over the speed limit. So what's the problem here? You carry that mentality down there to Ohio, and you wearing this hat that I'm wearing, and you got that down, you wearing that down there during football season. I can tell you right now, that's a problem. So, so you're talking about profiling. You know, I was profiling. I say people talk about profiling. You shouldn't profile. I was profiled because I'm from a state. So I feel pretty good when you start profiling me on other means. But if you're from Michigan, you profile because you're Wolverine. They identify everybody with the football team.
You know, the point is everything. Law enforcement, I have issues with it, but it depends on narrowing down the field, the scope of your suspects or the people you're looking out for. And let's face it, we're all profilable.
Yeah.
You know, if somebody who was white just did a burglary somewhere, I'm white. I fit the general category.
That's right.
So I mean, it's like another thing is liberals are always tell progressives will always say you shouldn't stereotype, pigeonhole, or categorize people. And then they study the social sciences, which actually that's their very thing they do.
Yeah.
Categorize, stereotype, pigeonhole. I mean, but it's only them because they come up with their own definitions of what is right and wrong, what should be profiled, what should be looked at. Mm-hmm. And then they're so loving until you disagree with them. Then all they do is turn and flip you the bird, call you names, scream at you. Because they think that you're so obtuse or so stupid that you can't possibly understand their reasoning power.
Yeah.
And I think that's what angers me about profile. We're just bringing about profiling.
Yeah.
But I mean,
yeah.
It's just like profiling is. I mean, nobody wants to be picked on because they're just a certain race. But let's face it, there's an ongoing situation that's, you know, you have to give out a general description of what you're looking for.
Sure.
I mean, everybody's profilable. Everybody is.
I don't get offended by it because I know that it does not have anything to do with me, and I don't personalize it because I know that I'm a upstanding citizen that follow the laws. I do 5 miles over the speed limit, but in my state, that's not the crime deals elsewhere. I need to learn what the policies are elsewhere in other states. But in this state, you know, it's a smiling situation. But when they profile, what they're doing is that they're narrowing down the suspects. If you don't have a way of looking at who you're looking at, if you don't have a way of narrowing down who you're looking for by profiling, then how do you know who to stop? Otherwise, you're stopping everybody. And not everybody fits every profile. You know, when I see profiling going on racially, John was mentioning the racial aspect to it, I blame the ones that are creating the stereotypical aspect of profiling. You can't, on the one hand, be in a group that's make up 6.5% of the population of the people, and they're accounting for 52% of the homicides in the country, and expect that they're not going to be profiled, that they know you personally, and they got your name, your serial number, the date you were born, and all the other things, the social security number, and they can just simply tell that's not you, so it's somebody else in that group. They don't know that. And when it happens, I understand it. I don't get offended by it. But if I do get offended, I'm blaming the person that created a categorization through which they profiling would be targeting me as Joe Citizen, who is only going to do 5 miles above the speed limit. Anything beyond that, I'm pretty good. But I do understand the mindset.
So I'm sitting here.
Not bad either.
So I mean, continue there. I mean, did you did you talk your way out of this ticket? Or?
Yeah, what they do when they stop you, I found this to be true also. They are trying to see if you fit into the profiling, that this guy is one of those guys that's going to rear his head up. He's going to start talking back. He's going to give some surly comments. And I'm very respectful. I was doing 5 miles over the speed limit. I'm not going to lie about it and say that I was doing exactly what was on that, because when they put the light on me, I looked at it, my speedometer. So I know what I was doing. He was just trying to see what my demeanor was. And they'll stop you at 5 miles over the speed limit in Ohio, but they're really looking to see you a typical Michigander that's going to, treat the Ohio State, troopers as we try to treat their football team. We try to beat them up, and they want to see if you're going to do that verbally. And I was very respectful. I told them I was doing 5 miles over the speed limit. I looked at my speedometer and saw that. I was not going to lie to him about it, and he chatted for a while about that, but I could tell he was trying to get more discourse out of me to see where I was coming from. And I understand that it's about a give and take type of thing. I really didn't think it was giving me a ticket over 5 miles, quite frankly. But if I start yachting off and give him 10 yards of my mouth, then it could have been a very different outcome, to the point where I have had them in Ohio much earlier, when I didn't know the rivalry. I've had them to take my driver's license, and then they want me to follow them, and they go down here and make the U-turn and come back. I get way down here to where I came from, take me to the station. And that's not good, backtracking and having to go forward after I've gone backwards the way I already covered the territory. I'm not too happy about that. So when they stop me, I'm going to be compliant. But I got the impression that he was not going to give me a ticket. And so we were just having a conversation, and I think he was trying to hear how I sound. And is there any belligerence here? And is this guy going to go off and make me have to almost pull my baton out and hit him on his fat head? And there was none of that. And we had a very cordial conversation. And he said that I told him I was doing 5 miles over the speed limit. So in that sense, I was saying I was guilty, but I didn't think the guilt rose to the level of a ticket in the mind's eye of what I was bringing to the table as far as how we see it here. And he wanted me to know that the speed limit was such and such. And I said, I understand that. But I'm thinking in my mind, you know, can you let me get out of here 5 miles over the speed limit? Go get some coffee. Now, I didn't say that, but that's what I was thinking. But after about 5 minutes of engaging me, he said, well, understand the speed limit is this. And for about the next 5 minutes, he's following me to make sure that I understood through the auditory, you know, canal. You know, trying to see if you gonna, you know, get past them and say, look, he didn't give me a ticket, and I'm in my mind's eye saying, you know, sucker, you know, get out of here, and then start speeding again. I did, you know what I did? 1 mile under the speed limit. I want to show him that I had learned my lesson. And I wanted to show respect also. He didn't give me a ticket, so I respect that. I didn't want to get pulled back like I had done on another occasion. And I went through it and, you know, passed the test. And I didn't speed anymore, you know, in Ohio, even coming back at this speed. So I was pretty proud of myself about that. And I think the officer would have been proud of me.
Even though we know you desperately want to get back into the friendly territory of Michigan
yeah,
and
right.
leave the hostile Buckeyes but to themselves, right?
Yeah, when I saw that sign saying, you're now entering the state of Michigan, oh boy, I breathed a sigh of relief, and I'm back to about 10 miles over the speed limit again.
Well, my friend was a truck driver. The guy lived, you know, 2 doors over from where I grew up at, or door next door. He was a long-distance truck driver. And back in the late 70s, late 80s, there was this good, like, kind of combative attitude between the Michigan State Police and the Ohio State Police. And they actually had, if the Michigan State Police thought they saw that if somebody was being pursued by the Ohio State Police across the the border, they'd actually stop. They'll let the person in the car go and hash it out with the Ohio State trooper. There's like this bitter combative attitude towards each other for a while. I don't know if that's ever been remedied, but I remember he was laughing about it because there's basically the Michigan State Police ran to Michigan. If you had a Michigan license plate, you were there, so they're going to protect you. Because this rivalry is really going too far.
You have to also know the particulars of where you are, and I found that true in the country at large, and also I found it outside the country in countries I've been in, and you just have to know what the territorial rules are, because every territorial possession is owned by the people in charge of it, and they have a way of looking at how they're going to protect the turf. And I've had to learn that over a period of time, but I had it down to a science in this case, and had some dealings in the past. You know, another thing, and I'll get off this subject, but I went to the Republican convention. I wasn't a delegate, but I went there to pay homage to the party that I was going to vote for, because I was sick of the Democrats after 8 years of Obama, and I was not going to go and endorse anybody running as a Democrat. After 8 years of that disaster, anybody following this administration we just had was not going to get my vote, was going to get it by me going to the opposite party, even if I had to go to a third party. But I didn't, because I thought Donald Trump was going to do an outsider's job that I expected Obama to do in 2008, but didn't do it. he was an outsider in a sense, but he was also an anti-American outsider. I wanted an outsider to be a pro-American, and that wasn't Obama, who was attacking this country for 8 years. So there's no way I'm going to be voting for the Democratic Party with that bad taste in my mouth. It just was not going to happen. But I went down to the Republican National Convention that was in Cleveland, and that city had to be the most the safest city, I would say, in the whole country during that time period, because I guess they were expecting a lot of problems, but they had brought the police force from all over the country. There was South Carolina there, and they were walking around with their group. They had their armband saying where they were from. There's some other troopers from another state. I'm sure this paid for by the federal government. And they were walking around. They were well armed. They were walking around. They weren't creating any problems, just walking around, and you know they were forced to be reckoned with if there was anything that broke out. And nothing occurred. You know, we had a lot of problems talking about what the Republicans had done and Donald Trump and all that. It was the safest place in America at that time. But one guy, each group that was doing their patrolling, and you couldn't help but run into them because they were everywhere. It'd be 7 or 8 of them in this group, and they would be from this state. 7 or 8 from this state. Seems like they were as far away as in Massachusetts. I don't know if I saw anybody from as far away as California, but it could have been some of those folks in there as well. But they were from all over the country. Very impressive, by the way, and very cordial, very respectful. But they were joking with me about wearing this U of M hat, and they I think these guys were from Ohio in that group, and they were kind of laughing and saying, "That hat, are you having a problem with that hat?" And I had some memory of how it goes down there wearing the hat, how serious it is, because I had been to some football games, and they would say "beat Michigan" rather than saying "beat Michigan." And I would stand up, me and my friend and I would stand up, and we'd say, "That's not Michigan, that's Michigan." And that would get the cheerleaders against us. They would point out, we got 2 guys in here on this side over here, and they are from Michigan. And then of course you got to hide down. That's serious. So I had some dealings along that line, and we laughed about it. But there was one guy I ran into, and he wasn't laughing. I was just walking down the street, and he said, "That hat, like that hat." And I said, "Well, I'm not trying to be provocative. I'm just, wearing what I normally wear wherever I am inside of the state of Michigan." And that guy said to me in a very honest voice, I mean, he was serious about this now. He said, "I owe you one." Just like that. Now, I have to say this. I wasn't trying to be provocative, but I wasn't taking my hat off. Yeah. But I noticed there was a lot of stares wherever you go. It's a serious rivalry. I don't know. I said I don't know about how it would be looked at here if you're from Ohio. I don't know. I would assume, because I haven't seen any indication otherwise, I would assume it's not a problem as much here. But down there, it's a serious problem. Anyway, I had that, and that was my Labor Day, story. And I got to get it together next time because I was visited and had to take the visitors back. And so I learned, when I go there again, I'm going to wear my hat, but I'm going to make sure that I'm doing at least 1 mile underneath the speed limit, just not to draw attention to myself other than my tags. And that's the way it was down there this time. I want to talk about something else that has to do with something that's current. I'm doing, on my Facebook wall, I'm doing a post again on what I want to talk about on the air, allpointstv.com and 92.1. I want to discuss pulling down monuments. I'm a historian, and I find that very abhorrent. To be pulling down historical relics of our history, and our whole history is partly good, some of it great, some of it not so good, and some of it not so great. Some of it very abhorrent. But the totality of it is how we got here today, and we all arrived in the future from that past. It's 2017. We weren't, those of us who are in my age group, we certainly weren't born in this time period. And those that are adults were not born in this time period. We all arrived here, and we arrived here together. And we came here through different histories in different parts of the country. And we viewed the history different in different parts of the country. We've all arrived here. And all the history that got us here in our different spaces, I think we need to honor that in terms of how we have not only separate boats we arrived in the country, but also we arrived in the future from that past, from different parts of the country's past. And I want to honor the history in its totality, because that's what made us a whole people. So I came here to the studio. Basically, I wanted to talk about what I'm doing, which is a second 5-part series that I'm doing. I did a 5-part series about 2 weeks ago, and I got so much flack from it, from those that wanted to disagree with it without understanding what I was saying, that made me, you know, I'm the kind of person that if you get on my case about something that I've written and I know that what I'm writing I can document, and they can't document what they're doing in objection to it, I have to, you know, come back and do a second part to it, because I cannot be intimidated. You know, nobody's going to tell me what I can write and what I can say, and the stands I can take and what stands I cannot take. And when I go on these radio shows and somebody's calling in, I was on a show program a week from this past Saturday, and after the program was over, the person that was the host of the program told me that he had gotten certain text messages, and they were saying, ask him about his wall on Facebook, all these posts that he has about Donald Trump. I wish they had asked that question while I was on the air, where I could have chewed them out, like somebody's going to tell me who I can endorse on my wall, on Facebook wall, and who I can support politically and who I cannot support, as if there's a committee out there whose permission I have to get to endorse what I think I should be doing as an individual citizen who have the right to make up my own mind about who I'm going to support in the political arena. Is I'm going to take their endorsement and I'm going to rubber stamp what they say without a view of my own. If that day ever happens, you know, make sure you write it down and make sure that I'm breathing when that day comes, because as long as I'm breathing, that's not going to happen. I mean, that's ridiculous. And so it was interesting. They want to know, ask this guy, you know, have you looked on this guy's wall to see what he says on his wall? He got a whole lot of things on there, you know, endorsing Donald Trump. I'm not endorsing Donald Trump. I'm endorsing Donald Trump's policies, the ones I agree with. And if he gets into a political standing that I don't agree with, it will be a different type of peer review of what he's doing. I'll endorse it as long as it's something I can support. If I don't support it, you'll hear that narrative also. But there are people that are ideologically driven, and they just cannot understand how you have a position based upon an idea, based upon a point of view, based on what you think is the truth that is being imparted. I'm not in love with either one of the political parties, nor in love with any particular candidate. But if the policies are policies I agree with, I don't care who's actually promoting the policy, I'm going to say that I agree with it. And I agree with a lot of things that Donald Trump is in fact doing. And so far, unlike the canaries out there who can't see anything that he does right, everything he does, they got to have a criticism of it. There are a lot of things I agree with Donald Trump on. And we're going to take a break and come back in 4 minutes with those persons at 92.1. And as they leave, I'm going to just discuss some things that I have in common with Donald Trump, and we're going to come back and talk about some things in the Constitution and where that comes from as well, of why I endorse what he's doing.
Also, we encourage people to follow us on YouTube at All Points TV and subscribe there, and also listen to us also on watch our shows on Comcast Channel 17 on Tuesday nights from 8:30 to 9:30. All the shows are going to be shown there in rotation at some point. So anyway, we're at 26:07, so they will join us at 30-minute mark. Okay. All right.
Okay, and we're glad to have them back at the point where they will pick the program up again on the other side of the commercial breaks from the station 92.1. We're glad to have you aboard. I was talking about some things I agree with Donald Trump on. I agree that we cannot kick this can down the road any further with North Korea. You know, we've allowed this situation to get out of hand over a 25 to 30 year period of time, going all the way back to Bill Clinton in 1992. And that is a quarter of a century ago, and we've allowed this thing to skyrocket, cascade down the mountain, so to speak, picking up steam. And we have this problem on our hand right now. And this belligerence that this man is, in fact, constantly putting out belligerent comments. Donald Trump was correct in saying that he will stop making these threats to this country, because we don't know which of those threats that he means, and then he wants to go on offense and do something there that's going to get us into a defensive posture. We want to let him know that is not acceptable. And I agree with Donald Trump when they said that so and so and so and so, who was a surrogate, said X, Y, and Z, and Donald Trump said, let me hear him say it. Because what Kim Jong-un did was pass off that part of his belligerence to a surrogate, so it doesn't come out of his mouth, so that the leader of the country is not saying it, but some surrogate who may not have the authorization, although I don't think that's the way North Korea operates. But it was a backing down from the position to an extent by the mere fact that it was not coming out of Kim Jong-un's mouth when those comments were made. And that was a certain degree of capitulation by that happening, by being said by someone else. But Donald Trump said, let me see him say it. If you notice it, the threats directly to this country, we're going to do this and we're going to do the other thing, and you're going to do that. We don't know which of those offensive statements mean there's going to be an offensive, conflict that's going to be in the aftermath of the talk. We don't know what they'll do. And as long as you're talking belligerent, we have to take you at your word that that's what you mean. And Donald Trump has made it very clear that that would be a big mistake, that this does not happen with him as it happened with these other presidents. We're talking about Clinton, we're talking about Bush, and we're talking about Barack Obama that have brought us to this moment. Because they kicked the can down the road, and there's no place to kick that can now, because we are there yet. Are we there yet? I want to welcome back the listeners from 92.1, and I'm just complimenting Donald Trump. I'm really saying, and I do believe this to be true, that Donald Trump has been a very admirable president for this country for the last, how many months has it been now? 8 months in office. Let's see, we are now in September.
Yeah, no,
so January the 20th, about 8 months later.
Yeah, no, WFOV viewers might have missed something too, but I mean, it could come, like I said, you can always watch it on All Points TV on YouTube. But what I think is crucial to you is you're pointing out a lot of stuff here that people are overlooking. It's being lost in the scream match, basically, in the temper tantrum. I think that you bring up a lot of points. So I'd like to welcome back to your viewers, by the way, too. So, and your listeners from WFOV. So thank you very much for coming back to us. Anyway.
Yeah, glad that you're back also, and I want to thank John for keeping the time track for us, because we do not want to go over the time that we've been instructed that WFOV needs to have in order to do their commercial breaks. We do understand that we're two networks here, and we're trying to be attentive to both. AllPointsTV.com goes straight through. We don't take any breaks, and we will continue that particular effort as well. I do want to say that I don't think that President Trump has been given a fair shake to do the things that I think this man, if he were given an opportunity, if we really wanted to make this country great, if that were really the case of all the players in the country, that was really what we want to do, I think we could really pull this country together. But I'm beginning to wonder, and I'm not really wondering much about it, quite frankly, but I'm becoming very much suspect if all these naysayers really want to make this country great again. I think some are just absolutely pulling against the country because they want this country to go downward. And why that would be the case is really a mystery to anyone that's inside of the, you're in a boat and you in there plugging holes, making holes in the boat, and you're going to sink with it. It raises a question about the mental state that people are in. I mean, are they crazy? I mean, is this a matter of willing to sacrifice oneself for a higher ideal? And if that be the case, what is the ideal that's higher than one's own life? What ideal would that be? Sacrificially, it has to be something that you're trying to do that has resonance above the selfishness that one has, because everyone wants to maintain their own life, unless they got something they feel is higher than that. Some people have the idea of something's higher than that. I don't know of anything higher, than one's life. So what is it if it's not insanity? And some people just do not seem to want to get on board with, let's all pull together and make this experiment work for all of us and for our grandchildren, our children and grandchildren, and their children and grandchildren. We got to turn this boat around. And that means that we've got to start doing things a little bit differently. This brought us to the brink of this cliff, because what we're doing right now is not working on any of the cylinders. And we got into a crisis. We're in a crisis mode right now. And we're going to be having some programs on that in terms of what this crisis really looks like behind the scenes, because what the rulers in this country are doing is they're panicking, because we're there yet. And they're doing a lot of things to hide that this ship of sea, this thing is out there in the middle of the water, and there are no roars to roar back to the shore. They're trying to act like they're in control of it, but a lot of this is on automatic pilot right now. And I'm talking here about the budget, for example, where Donald Trump went to the Democrats and had them get on board with raising the debt ceiling. The Republicans didn't want any part of it, because some of them are these rhinos in there. They're undermining. We can't tell who the Democrats are and who the Republicans are. This idea that we got these two different parties is political. This is trickery. On their part. These parties are not really that far apart, and they play a lot of gamesmanship, pretty much on the same page in most of the particulars. But Donald Trump went to the Democrats, and they had the debt ceiling addressed and raised it. But you know what? To be honest with you, the debt ceiling, well, whatever they say about it, if you think you can deny the debt ceiling being raised, or you raise it by some kind of arbitrary lawmaking, raise it and that's what happens, or don't raise it and the opposite happens. That's not how it goes. The debt ceiling is going to go up whether they vote to raise it or not, because you have to understand how the debt is in fact created in this country, and they don't. Some of that is theirs, 5% of it. The other 95%, see, 5% of it is created by the Federal Reserve, and that's the currency. The other 95%, that's through fracking, bank fracking, loans, going to the grocery store and buying on a credit card.
Wait a minute. Now, I'm curious. So I've never heard of bank fracking.
What do you call it? Bank fractional loaning. Yeah, I meant to say fractional loaning. Fractional loaning at the banks, and that is where the banks take in, let's say, $100, and they have to keep 10% of that on hand. Why? Because the multiplicity aspect of putting your money in the bank is that you're not going to have everybody wanting their money at the same time. So you keep 10% of this amount of money put in there and keep 10% of the other person. When people come there to get their money, it's just simply go into a digital, go in and deal with the numbers, and they lower your account by this much in terms of changing numbers, and they raise the ones that deposit money. That is another account where the money goes up. They take 90% of it out and loan it out to others and put it in other accounts where money would be available. It's fractional loaning though, and so when they loan out, you put $100 in there, they loan out $90 of that money. So what they did is take $100 and they turn it into $190. Now, is there $190 in that drawer of that person that made the deposit? No. What's in that drawer is $10. But it's created, $190, and then you continue to do the 10%, and that comes out to $81 in the second transaction, and it just continues to multiply in terms of 10% of that and 10% of the other thing, and before you know it, out of that $100 deposit, there's been $1,000 that's been created from it.
Money never sleeps. I mean, that Wall Street follow-up, movie, Wall Street, Money Never Sleeps. It's true. Like a lot large banks that you're talking about they'll take the money at the end of the day and actually deposit in an account, and then they'll actually make loans off that. And it's 24-hour loans, and they'll come back and like maybe 1 or 2 points. Yes, if everybody wants that bank to try to get their money out of it, their money's not there.
They couldn't handle any of that.
I wouldn't even want to hazard. Would you know what the percentage actually of requirement? There's supposed to be reserve requirement, deposit requirement in banks to be considered financially, solvent and not getting in trouble with the regulatory bodies. But I would say with this amount of money is coming in going, I wouldn't say there's actual money in print even to cover. And this is just my own guess, 30% of what the actual obligation may be.
Yeah, John, you'll never have enough money in. Well, we say money. I'm saying I say money because that's what everybody says. There's actually no money in the economic system of this country. It's all it's currency. There is no money. There's only different forms of a note. There are two kinds of notes. In other words, when you say note, you mean debt. There are two kinds of debt that's inside of the currency stream. One is the Federal Reserve note. And if you look at your currency, you'll see that's on the currency. Federal Reserve note. Anytime you have notes, you have debt. Car note, house note, furniture note. Any kind of note that you have, note means that you have a debt to be paid off. So the Federal Reserve note is a note that you have that has the value that's on the currency. But the reason why you don't pay any additional interest on it once you spend it is because that was born into debt at the Federal Reserve level, and they've already borrowed it into existence with a 6% override. So then it means the currency is borrowed into existence at that face value plus a 6% of interest that's attached to it being borrowed into existence. Now, where does the 6% exist? It doesn't exist. And that's the problem. That's why you keep paying on the interest of the debt. If you notice, they keep paying on the interest of the debt. They'll say, we're balancing what? They are in accord with paying the interest on the debt. There's not enough money to pay both the interest and the principal of the debt. And the problem that you have here, quite frankly, because they got a certain disguise going on, is that if you pay off, follow me here for a minute, if you pay off the debt and you have the currency over here, what you'll see happening, if you can visualize how it works, is that as you pay off the debt and it goes down at this rate, the debt on this side here and the currency on this side will begin to accelerate the same rate. And when the currency goes out of existence, the debt stays here at this level where the principal is. In other words, the currency has been exhausted and destroyed, because when you're paying the debt off, you also are eroding the currency, because the currency is the flip side of the debt. They don't expect you to understand this. They are clever. These these politicians are very clever. They don't expect you to be able to follow that. That the debt is the currency that you're holding. When Samuel L. Jackson asked that question, what's in your wallet? It doesn't matter which credit card. He wants you to take the Capital One credit card. It doesn't matter which credit card you have. They may pay a little bit more on the interest, but the interest is just debt. The interest does not exist in terms of the currency. The interest is where they put zeros and so on, other numbers on your bank account. The money to pay that off, it does not exist. No interest in the country exists. In other words, in fact, your debt doesn't exist until you borrow it into existence. I'm going to go to, when I leave here, I got to fill my car with gas. When I give them that credit card at that pump, because very few people go into the store, where if you go in the store, you're paying them cash, right? They may have a different price in terms of the price for the card price and the price for the cash. They'll incentivize you paying cash where there will be no markup. But most persons do not want to go through the process of going in there. So they want to pay at the pump. The money, the paying at the pump with that card, what you're paying with that card does not exist until it's borrowed into existence. So think about it being a zero, and you borrow it into existence on that card, to which once it's borrowed into existence because it did not exist beforehand, then it's borrowed into existence, listen carefully, with an interest attached to it if it's not paid off in a certain amount of time. With the note borrowed into existence at the Federal Reserve level, because it is held in abeyance, the interest is then paid, it's attached to it, because the borrowing is borrowing in perpetuity. That's why you pay on interest every month. All they do is pay on the interest. They're not paying on what they're doing is raising the debt ceiling. But because the interest is accumulating each month, you never pay on the principal. So the principal is sitting there getting additional charges attached to it. That's where the debt comes in. And it can never be paid off. When these lying politicians talking about we're gonna pay down the national debt, are they all lying? Either they're lying or they don't understand how the debt is accumulated. It's impossible. Why? Because the amount of money that's in the system, and I call it money only because that's the terms that you use, is that the money to pay off the debt does not exist. There's not enough money, if you want to call it money, there's not enough money in the system to pay itself off. Because to pay itself off is a destroyed currency, and you get the markup of the debt, the interest on it, that you don't have because it doesn't exist. I don't know if that's clear, but it's clear to me. It's designed to be confusing. Because if you can follow them, you go out there and throw them out of office. These politicians are very clever. They created they got a false economic system here. And it runs, it's automatic pilot, it runs on its own. It doesn't have to have those guys there raising the ceiling. It's going to raise itself. They're not in control of that. They've created a monster, and you know how you create the Frankenstein monster, and the monster develops a mind of its own? That's what they've done in this country. This thing has a mind of its own. And all the other currencies around the world that are based on this currency, they're in trouble also. When we have a collapse this time because of the fact that all of them are tied into the dollar, the world has a collapse. The first time in history where we've gotten into the entire calamity is going to be worldwide. And when it pops, the whole world's going to feel the effects. And it starts out here in Washington. That's where it started. In 1944 at the Bretton Woods Conference. Somebody ought to go and read about it, because it's there to be read about. And they had John Maynard Keynes and these other economists there. They didn't know what they were talking about. And now we are now getting ready. We're now at a point of paying the piper, because you can only play this game for so long. But this thing is out of control. Let me say this. I don't want to get off the air without talking about Donald Trump, and also I want to say something about the Constitution. Donald Trump is trying to rescind some of the power that has over time been ceded to the federal government against what the Constitution requires and calls for. We don't know this, but there has been an erosion of state authority as we begin to expand the authority at the federal level. If you expand the power of the federal government, which was abhorrent to the framers, they wanted to limit that power, and then embolden the power which was at the state level, because that's what the people are. The people are living inside the states. But if you in fact allow power to be accrued at the central level, where the people are not there. At the center, at the hub of the nation, you have the 10 square mile Washington, D.C. carved out of Maryland and Virginia. There's not a hub of where the people are. The people are residing in the 50 states. And the District of Columbia is not even a political unity as far as its electoral in terms of the election of anybody there until they gave the District of Columbia electoral votes, I think in 1964, wasn't it? Somewhere around there, 61 or 64, where the 3 electoral votes were assigned to the District of Columbia. At one time, they were a disenfranchised part of the Republic, with no say-so in the electoral vote of the President of the United States. But then that became a problem based upon the fact that everybody ought to have some voice in the elected leadership as far as the President of the United States is concerned. And so they gave them 3 electoral votes, or the number of electoral votes it would have if they were in fact a state. So that was very good. We now got 538 electoral votes rather than 535, meaning that the total number of House members and total number of members of senators, 535 in that totality. And then you had 3 electoral votes from the District of Columbia, which makes it 538. So that addendum was made, but it was designed to keep the states in charge of the affairs of the government, and that was supposed to be limited. Donald Trump is trying to restore that, and I give him a lot of credit for saying, even if he doesn't mean it in all areas of the federal government's operation, I do think he's making a serious effort to return some of the power to the people. And they're not doing us a favor by doing that. That's what the Constitution requires. And this tax break that they don't want to give the American taxpayers, want to reduce the taxes down to 15% or 20%, at least that from the 35% bracket that we're in right now, where that's just the federal level, and we've got taxes on the state and local levels. And then other taxes they got in there, they never stop taxing you on all the things that they're taxing you on, because there's an excise tax, there's sales tax. I have 2 dogs, so we got a tax on the dogs. You call it a license for the dog. I got a license dogs that live in my house and they'll leave my yard unless I got them on a leash.
I'll go to the vet. But I just think that it's like, Americans just don't realize how much of their income goes in taxes, because they for one thing, the payroll deductions makes it seem like painless. You see the numbers if you look at your pay stub, but I mean, it doesn't. I like to tell people this: keep all your money, but you have to keep in mind you have to keep enough money to pay what you're being currently taxed at the end of the year. And you see all this money grow in your bank account, then you have to enter this the fiscal year or whatever, and whenever you got to do your taxes, you got to write a check. Once you see all that money leaving and how much you don't no longer have, if they did that, there'd be a tax roll the very next day.
It would be. They're very good about disguising it. And John, one of the ways that they disguise how much we're taxed is that they put as much as they can without raising rebellion inside the country on those who are here now as taxpayers. The rest of it, they bury it in the future. The national debt is the burial of the debt incurred in the present, because even with a $3.27 trillion tax base every year, with an economy that does $15 trillion plus in its GNP every year, and they tax $3.27 trillion of that out of the hands of the American people every year, not just 1 year, but every year is taxed. They know they cannot put the taxation on the people present to the point where they began to understand, I can't pay my bills. They even just enough for you to be able to do that where you won't rise up, but they put the rest of it, they don't stop taxing, they put the rest of it on those who are not yet able to discern they're being taxed. That's on the young, the pre-voters, and those who are unborn, who will be born into the country with $20 trillion of debt, plus the debt that you're going toward based on the fact it's been transferred and deferred into the future. Don't forget now, when they talk about unfunded liabilities, what they mean by that is that it's been placed in the future as unfunded, but they're using it in the present time period. Otherwise, why are you borrowing it? You're borrowing it to be used in the present.
And another thing is,
but it's unfunded going down into the future.
Politicians use our own taxes to get people to vote for them so they can continue to put the stranglehold on us for more taxes, because they're promising other people money, doing stuff for more money. And then they come here and shake your hand and everything. Hey, I did this for you. Yeah. You didn't do anything for me. You took from me to give to these other people, and I'm supposed to thank you for that being put underneath the yoke. I'm supposed to thank you for that.
Yeah, and I thank you for that comment, because you definitely understand how this game, operates. See, they've learned a lot over the time of the American so-called American Revolution. It wasn't an American Revolution; it was a secession movement based upon taxation, and they're very clever about disguising that by calling the Civil War a war over slavery. I'm writing a post, my 5-point post, to do a follow-up to the earlier 5-point post. And I'm not declaring that this was a war over slavery. This is nonsense. You have slavery in both camps, the Union States and the Confederate States. You have slavery on both sides. How are you fighting a war against slavery, and there's slavery in the Union States and slavery in the non-Union States? And I was making a comment, some of my friends on Facebook were saying they didn't know that when this war first struck out April the 12th, 1861, which is just a month after, almost a little bit more than a month after Lincoln had taken the inaugural oath, his first inaugural oath, which he took on March the 4th, 1861. About a month later, a little bit more than a month later, there's a war going on. And this war was over taxation, which they made over slavery in order to hide the fact that the objection in 1861 was the same objection that had 74 years to be when the Constitution was written, a little bit longer than that, in 1776. You can go and add the years up, 100 and what? Let's see, 1776 to 1787. That's, 11 years? Yeah, it lasts 11 years there. And then from 1787 to today, how many years would that be? And we're having another objection to the taxation that they had in 1861, and they would object to it right now. But what they learn is that they've got to disguise the taxes, because as long as people recognize that they're being overtaxed and overburdened with big government, which was never intended to be, then they object to it. We object to giving our money to strangers, politicians. We don't even know the ones we have in our own elected state. Let's know the ones who are siding with them, the tax the money out of our hands in this state here that resides in other states. We don't know who those persons are, and we do not agree. We want to make the decisions about our money, and they know that. You can read a book about it, by the way. There's a very good book, and he's written a whole series of books. Charles Adams, Those Dirty, Rotten Taxes. So Donald Trump, you keep doing what you're doing. Restore more power back to where the framers intended for it to be, and that's with the people in the states, as spelled out in Amendment 10, which was that all powers not specifically delegated to the federal government is retained by the states, because they're doing a delegation, or to the people of the states they're in. Anything that's not enumerated and specifically given to the federal government will therefore be retained by the states or to the people the states represent. And that's our Constitution. And Donald Trump, to the extent you're trying to do that, we're going to stay with you on that, because that's the direction we're going to be heading in, going back to where the framers were. Okay, got to get out of here again. Glad you were with us for the last hour. I want you to, in fact, follow your dream. Because if you don't follow your dream, you'll never know what's on the other side of the rainbow.